Hello, everyone. My name's Alan Dick. Just kidding. I'm Scott Silverman. Alan Dick is unable to join this afternoon, but on behalf of my fellow co-founders, Alan, obviously, and Veronica Sonsev, as well as the rest of the Commerce Next team, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. It is Engage, Influence, and Sell, 3 ways to improve your customer's journey. Before we go any further, I'd like to welcome and thank today's speakers. We have Selena Wong, Senior Director of Analytics and Strategic Insights at Tula Skincare, Josh Friedman, former Head of Digital Products and Merchandising at Blue Apron, Greg Dowling, Global Director of Business Insights at Glassbox, Courtney Herb, Director of Brand Marketing at AdRoll, and Christian Ward, Chief Data Officer and EVP at Yext. So quick programming note, we're trying out a different format today. We'll have 3 distinct segments, each one examining a different facet of the customer journey. At the end of the webinar, we'll take a moment to let us know what you think of the format by filling out a brief survey. You'll be directed to that at the end of the webinar. So I would like to now go through a couple housekeeping slides. So first, I want to thank our webinar sponsors, Glassbox, Yext, and AdRoll. I'd like to thank Maeve, Robert, and Alan, who are all off screen helping to make this webinar a success. And thanks to all of you for joining us today. So coming up next is we have a webinar on Wednesday, July 19th, next week, Unleashing the Hidden Power of User-Generated Content to Drive Engagement and Profit. We have speakers from Sadia Group, Colgate-Palmolive, Yogi, and Alan. Hopefully will be here for that one to moderate that. In case you missed any previous webinars, we have our YouTube channel, and there are hundreds of videos on every topic you could think of that we've covered at our events, in our webinars, past interviews with e-commerce leaders. I encourage you to check it out, do some searching on there. I guarantee you're going to find some useful content for yourself. We are doing a giveaway, so you can enter to win a Mesa Solo stove. If you follow our Instagram and you like the most recent post. So go to Commerce Next on Instagram to enter to win this Solo stove, which I heard they're amazing. So a couple housekeeping notes. Don't worry about missing anything. We're recording the webinar. We'll make it available tomorrow. And I just want to show you where a couple things are on your screen so you can make the most of today's time. So all of the functionality for the webinar is in the upper right, the chat, the Q&A, the polling questions. So if you go into the chat, this is where you can make comments about some of the things that you're hearing. You can give high fives to our speakers, whatever you like. But if you want to ask questions, go to the Q&A and you can ask a question there. There is a function where you can upvote. And that way we'll know which questions are of most interest to our audience, and we'll make sure to prioritize having those go to the speakers. And then on the handout section, you can see all of the handouts that are available for this webinar. There's a number of different PDFs there for you to take a look at and download. And those of you who are watching the replay, you'll see that you can get on that. What's circled in the or the square red box is where you can get data from you can get the handouts and you can get the results of the polling questions. So our agenda today, we're going to have a panel discussion on leveraging real-time data. We'll do a quick audience poll, and then we have a presentation from Courtney on retargeting strategies for today, tomorrow, and beyond. And then a presentation by Christian Ward on how conversational AI is revolutionizing chatbot effectiveness. So I would like to now bring up our 3 panelists. Hello, Josh, Selena, Greg, how are you all doing today?
Hey, Scott.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
being a part of this. So I want to start by just having you each give a quick introduction to yourselves and the role at your company. So why don't we start off with the way I'm seeing it on my screen with Josh.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Josh Friedman. I've previously served as Chief Product Officer at Blue Apron, responsible for our digital experiences and optimization.
Great. And Selena?
Hello, everyone. I'm Selena, Senior Director of Analytics and Insight here at Tula. And for those of you unfamiliar with Tula, Tula is a probiotic skincare company. And not only is our probiotics good for your gut health, they're also great for hydrating your skin.
And finally, Greg.
Yes, hello, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Greg Dowling, Global Director of Business Insights at Glassbox. And for those of you who may not be familiar with Glassbox, we're a digital experience platform powering our customers to create frictionless digital journeys. We do this all by identifying, quantifying, and resolving the sources of friction within the customer journey. It's great to be here.
All right, we're just going to jump into the conversation and get started with kind of a foundational question around how your organization tracks and analyzes and optimizes the customer journey, and really what metrics and KPIs do you use with that? So, Selena, could we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Tula, of course, we have event tracking on our site. We also use an MTA multi-touch attribution tool, as well as a heat map tool. And we also have A/B testing, of course, for our optimization. And then from a KPI standpoint, I think aside from conversion rate, which I think many of you out there care a lot about, we also look at revenue per visit. We also think about and measure LTV, not only from an actuals perspective, but also predicted at the product channel and all the way down to the customer level, as well as looking at the split between new versus existing customer journey.
And Josh, you were with a subscription business, which is a little unique, but how are you looking at it there?
Yeah, a lot like what Selena said, we focus a lot on lifetime value because those subscriptions need to have longevity to them and frequency within the ordering pattern. So we're looking a lot at the early stages of that curve. So not only conversion, but also where we are on retention of those subscriptions after each major milestone, like number of orders and number of weeks subscribed, and then we're able to project out lifetime value. On top of that, it's fairly standard digital analytics KPIs like conversion and order size and margin.
So, Greg, hearing what Selena and Josh are saying, is this what you're seeing when working with a wide variety of clients? Are there any trending KPIs that you're seeing that are gaining some ground, or folks are using more these days?
Yeah, sure thing, Scott. So as you stated, we have the purview across a number of different verticals and different personas and user types within the companies that we service. Right, so our customers will run the gamut from straight on retail, subscription based, financial services, insurance, and so we are privy to and see many different tracking methodologies. I love the idea of track, analyze, optimize. I call it the Tao of insights. Right, track, analyze, optimize. The important thing there is to repeat. And since we're talking about real-time data, I think it's important to understand that the metrics that we're talking about are pivotal to the customer experience. But it's important, as I stated, I think early on, around Glassbox's approach to this is identifying, quantifying, and then resolving the sources of friction. So from a digital experience perspective, I think that as close as possible in real time, where you can identify these speed bumps or these struggles that are occurring. Now, these can be either technical in nature, so APM specific or experience specific, I think the benefit there is proximity to that and ability to respond and react quickly when changes are needed. I do see, and maybe we'll get to talk about this a little bit more in the later questions, but there is a future here when generative AI and machine learning are able to do a lot of that quick thinking for us and that optimization for us. When is it appropriate to do that? I think we're still figuring that out. And there are certain things where it makes sense to do that and certain things when not. I would say traditional KPIs are, again, around understanding who the customer is, what they were trying to achieve, and whether or not they were successful. And everything else just sort of stems from that.
So you got us started on this topic of real-time data, and I want to bring Josh and Selena into the conversation. If you could, help us understand, what you're thinking about in terms of capturing real-time data. How is this evolving? How are you able to act on this? And then how do you separate, what you want to act on and what you don't want to act on, the signal from the noise? Josh, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think Greg brought up a couple of great contexts around when real-time data is really important, certainly around errors and slowness and things that are affecting the intended customer experience. So if we're seeing 404s or we're seeing page load times or anything else, we certainly want to know about that, triage it, and fix it quickly. And using real-time data is really important to that. I think the second context where real-time data is important is obviously we're in the middle of a very highly promotional period around retail with Prime Day and everybody's competitiveness with Prime Day. And then, of course, there's Black Friday and Cyber Monday and different promotions where you might have in-stock risk or just campaign effectiveness risk that you have a very short runway to capitalize on. And so you want to be understanding real-time data so you can boost or bury or replace anything that might be promotional or campaign. And then obviously if there's anything that's run amok with a promotion that's getting used more than anticipated or a campaign that's overspending or things of that nature, you want those circuit breakers on there. From my point of view, outside of that, the real-timeness is a bit of a slippery slope, and we want to make sure that reacting to false positives or false negatives, and we're getting statistical significance on any breakouts of the standard deviation that we're seeing on our key KPIs, whether that's at a page level or a customer level or a transaction level. So we're being a little more meaningful and purposeful in our analysis before we react and certainly overreact.
Wait, are you seeing a future where, as Greg suggested, generative AI can kind of take over there, or how far out do you see that, or maybe never?
Yeah, and I don't think it's that far in the future. I think we all have campaign optimization tools that we can run, whether they're coming from our testing platform or targeting platforms, that will move between contents or promotions or other campaigns if they're not performing to spec or we're seeing a elongated trend. I think the future, like you're calling out, Scott, of AI is, hey, if I'm seeing some customers come in that have different expectations, as Greg was talking about, can I gen up a new piece of content that they'll react to better, whether that's a lifestyle image or a product image or any other sort of promotional copy that the generative AI can produce in real time to react to that. And I do think that time is coming.
And Selena, what's your thoughts on this real-time data?
Yeah, I think at Tula today, just to share a couple of examples of how we're using real-time data, when we're talking about capturing browse and add to cart behavior, we're also, if you're ever in our checkout process, we have a section that is reading from real-time data of what you have in cart to then say what are, add-ons to boost your glow. So that's a great way of how we're using real-time data to also think about upselling, cross-selling products, right? Because someone might know about, category A. In our case, it might be moisturizer, but we know, cleanser would be your first step before you even moisturize. So that's one example. The other example that we've leveraged using real-time data is all around traffic source. So you're capturing the traffic source of where your customers are coming from. And so we're thinking about the customer journey of where there might be friction points, such as the email pop-up modal, right? How many sites out there today do you jump on and suddenly you're trying to browse and then you get the pop-up of like, sign up for our newsletter or sign up for our SMS, right? And I'm sure many of you out there are thinking, I got to capture that data, but is it really annoying to our customer? And so we're leveraging traffic source to test and optimize for conversion, where we're thinking about when do you know that customers are coming in and they are considered net new? So when are they further up the brand awareness funnel, where they're just discovering your brand and it's more important to capture their email information versus someone who's probably clicking from an email campaign? Guess what? They already signed up via email, right? So why have the pop-up disrupt their journey?
Greg, anything, thanks, Selena. Anything you want to add about real-time data that Josh or Selena didn't cover?
Yeah, it's interesting hearing, both Josh and Selena, I would say lament is probably the wrong word, but, how do we use this data? So, wow, we get real-time data. I'm watching this come in, and how do I react to it? Being in session replay, right? That's the question we get almost all the time. It's like, yeah, great. So I have 20 million sessions I've recorded. What do I do with those? So we obviously put tools and capabilities on top of that so that you can find those sessions that matter the most and are of most importance to you. Even better is to get pulled into the platform, get pulled in to those insights. And we do that. And so I suggest that folks would leverage alerting. And these are threshold alerts. If something goes above this level, I want to know about it right then and there. We also, with generative AI and machine learning, we're able to use incredibly successfully anomaly alerts. So we can look back in time and we can understand, using our learning model and large learning models, understand what should be the expected value. And we can even forecast what that anticipated projected value should be. And when it gets outside of that range, an anomaly occurs, and that anomaly gets notifications sent out. That you can come then in and find, oh, look, here's a sample of this particular session where this anomaly occurred. Let me now watch what happened. And that's the great thing about session replay, right? Is that it's not just what happened, it's why. I can go and actually see why this occurred. And I think that's really, if I had one thing to put in there, it's like, so AI, or excuse me, real-time data, that's just like drinking from a fire hose. And what am I going to do with that?
So we're going to jump into kind of a meaty question, maybe kind of take a step back a little bit in terms of management when it comes to customer journeys. And I always find these interesting because I think kind of org structure and culture and leadership, are so critical. I mean, you can have everything else right, but without those, things often will fall apart or you won't execute properly. But I wanted to kind of dig a little bit about the way you're thinking about effective collaboration and resolving issues across teams. I know that sometimes different teams will be optimizing for different goals, and hopefully there are those goals are not at odds with one another, but I know sometimes that can happen. But I'm interested to hear from Selena and Josh on how do you, when you've encountered that, how are you managing that? Josh, we'll start with you.
Sure. Well, of course, Scott, it'll kind of depend a little bit on the context of the conflict or the dependency that needs to be both exposed and resolved, right? Certainly employing processes and governance that are typical in Agile and Scrum types of environments is a good way to do that. And that includes some some planning moments, as well as during execution, having, whether it's a scrum of scrums or other outlets to do that. Certainly there will always be escalations that require either capacity to be prioritized or just a prioritization, and that's those pathways need to be there, and relying on the scrum teams to bubble those up through processes is the best way to do that, in my opinion.
Selena, anything you want to add to that, or Greg?
I would, of course, plus one to what Josh just talked about in terms of governance and process. I think sometimes when you think about what teams are responsible for, in some ways it's a good thing to have friction between teams, because when a team is thinking about optimizing for revenue this month versus another team is focused on what's the long-term aspect of this. And it makes me think of an example where when we were running a test, one team said, we have a winner because, look at the revenue boost for just this month. But guess what? It tanked the LTV of that cohort. And so that's where my team jumped in, and we had, what Josh was referring to in terms of a scrum team, or what we have is we have a, we call it CRO squad. So it's a revenue conversion rate optimization squad. And we meet every 2 weeks and we talk about what tests and how the site is performing and where do we have optimization opportunity. And that's also where we debate, right? So where one team says, we got to cover the revenue for this month, another team also comes in and says, what's the long-term impact?
All right. Well, we have just a minute left, and I want to do kind of like a rapid fire round around, what you're all seeing as the most innovative strategies or emerging trends in e-commerce. If you can pick one that is helping businesses drive conversion through seamless digital experience, and we'll start with you, Josh, and then we'll go to Selena and have Greg wrap it up.
Okay, the most innovative. Well, I don't know if I want to tempt the most innovative. I tend to try to be as practical as possible, but certainly, what we're seeing in, and I know it's buzzwordy, but in AI, especially with chatbots, because planned and intended customer journeys are really nice, but we all know people and customers tend to interpret things differently and go in different directions than we plan for them to or wish they did. And what I love about chat and now chatbots is the ability to resolve, if not mitigate, some of those exception cases, which are numerous. So I'll stick with that. Solid. I don't know if it's a golden oldie, Scott. It hasn't been around for that long, but at this point, it doesn't seem so innovative anymore.
I wasn't looking for like the most innovative, but just like something new that is helping to drive conversions that our audience can walk away with and think, oh, maybe I should look into that. So that's perfect. So thank you. Selena, how about you?
Yeah, I think along the same lines as Josh, it's something that I'm excited that we're already in the process of testing, which is around Gen AI, but it's around dynamic automation of like copy and content, right? We only have a limited amount of resources to go after this today, but with this unlock, from a testing perspective and messaging perspective, I'm super excited about that. It's how do we, go out into market and test even faster than what we're doing today.
Okay, well, so Selena stole mine. Selena stole mine, so that's a really, really, really good one. And not to drop any vendor names other than Glassbox, but there's really, really some interesting stuff that I saw available from one of the largest content creative and analytics companies out there. So for me, I think it's really, really interesting. I like to look at journey. And so Josh had said that there's challenges in journey and predefined journey. I think moving into Gen AI and the ability to now take all of the journeys, visualize them in real time, have the AI understand who that visitor is, what they're trying to achieve, understand previous actions and who that visitor is, everything about them, their lifetime value included, et cetera, and realize when they're going into a problem area, right? And then offer up like an air traffic controller, we're going to reroute you around this. We're going to move this over here. Yeah. So that's where I see an innovative thing coming, and we're working on that here at LastPass.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, Greg, Selena, and Josh, for sharing your insights about customer journeys. Really appreciate that. As a reminder, next week we're going to return to our standard webinar format with the webinar Unleashing the Hidden Power of User-Generated Content to Drive Engagement and Profit. And now we are going to move on to our next facet of customer journeys. And I'd like to bring on Courtney Erb, Director of Brand Marketing at AdRoll, and she's going to talk about retargeting strategies for today, tomorrow, and beyond. Courtney.
And hello, everybody. Thank you to Commerce Next for having me today. Really excited to talk about the wide world of retargeting. From AdRoll, we at AdRoll have a huge legacy of retargeting. So really excited to talk with you all today about a bunch of different strategies and some upcoming changes that you need to be aware of. So to just get started today, we're going to talk about the past, present, and future of retargeting. So retargeting can be an incredibly powerful tool for creating a personalized experience for your customers as they work their way down the funnel. However, there are some changes coming to retargeting that you should be aware of as a marketer so you can prepare well ahead of time and actually enhance your retargeting strategy. So today we're going to talk about the current state of retargeting, some general best practices, how Google's upcoming privacy plans are going to affect retargeting as we know it now, and what you as a marketer can do to prepare now for that change. So let's get started. So first off, let's start with some basics about current retargeting methods and how you can use them to enhance your customer journey. Let's talk about retargeting as it exists today. So if you're watching this session, chances are good that you're already very well aware of what retargeting is. And that's a method of advertising that uses your site visitors' previous behaviors to serve them personalized ads that encourage them to come back to your site and hopefully, fingers crossed, make a purchase or convert. So there are actually two different forms of retargeting. So the first is pixel-based, and this relies on first-party data or browser data, known as third-party cookies, to track digital users' browsing behaviors across your site. And that includes what pages they visit, how long they spend on particular pages, and so on. So if a user's behavior matches a particular condition that you've established, for example, a site visitor added items to their cart, but they didn't wind up checking out, your marketing platform can add them to a designated retargeting list and then retarget them and send them ads based on those products or based on your brand from there. You also have list-based retargeting. So this relies purely on first-party data that you've collected in your database and contacts from your connected site. So once you upload this contacts list with your email addresses and the information that you've collected, you can then create a list, and that list will then be used to retarget to customers. So the list-based targeting relies solely on information that you're collecting. Naturally, it's going to be a little bit more work on your end. You have to collect that data, you have to organize it, as opposed to pixel-based that can use first-party data as well as third-party. And retargeting ads can run across just about any marketing channel that you can think of, and that includes web, email, social media, even mobile. So it's a great way to meet your customers really wherever they are. So because retargeting can create personalized messages across so many different platforms, it can be huge for both building relationships with prospective customers and then driving them to convert, as well as really garnering that loyalty with your existing customer base. So retargeting ads can drive a bunch of different actions across this user journey from the top of funnel all the way down to the bottom. So this includes things like driving brand awareness, boosting conversions, recovering abandoned carts, and even increasing LTV of existing customers. It's all about giving those really personalized messages that make customers feel like they are individuals instead of being targeted as this big group. So, now that we've talked about retargeting and how it exists right now, let's talk about some upcoming changes that are coming down the pipe for retargeting and what that means for the retargeting world. So unless you've been living under a rock, you're probably aware that Google's announcement that they are deprecating all use of third-party cookies for their advertising in 2024. And this is beginning with 1% of users in Q1 of next year. so sometime early in 2024. So why is this happening? Well, internet companies have started to take note in their users' desires for further privacy. And ultimately, these internet companies, including Adderall, agree with them. So major internet browsers like Safari, which is owned by Apple, and Firefox, which is owned by Mozilla, they've actually already deprecated the use of these cookies in their advertising. But the reason that Google is a really big deal is because Google is set to account for nearly 30% of online advertising revenue in 2023. So that means that the impact of Google making this change is going to be a lot farther reaching than those changes that Safari or Firefox has already made. So you're probably wondering, Google's an advertiser, they want to make money, and then they're getting rid of this huge way of driving revenue. So how are they going to make up for that? What's replacing third-party cookie usage? So what's going to replace this current cookie method of retargeting is known as the Protected Audience API. So pending its success on that 1% of users that Google is going to launch at the beginning of next year, Google will then plan to roll out this plan in its entirety to all of Chrome users by the end of 24. So this proposal was created in collaboration with the World Wide Web Consortium, known as W3C, and that's an internet standards organization that consists of many industry players, including Adderall, including some of our competitors like Criteo, pretty much any online internet advertising company or internet dominant company that you can think of has been part of this group to ensure that the changes that are being made take into account different usability among these advertising platforms, take into account users' privacy, and also take into account the brands, such as yourselves, who are trying to use these platforms for advertising. So it's been a really collaborative effort among Google and the industry at large. So you're probably wondering, okay, so we're getting rid of third-party cookies. What does that mean for retargeting? Is retargeting just going away? And the answer is no, it's not going away, but it is changing. So despite disclosures that currently exist that let internet users know that they're being tracked and that their information is being collected, it's pretty tough for the average internet user to figure out and understand exactly how much of their information is being collected by advertisers. So to remedy this, Google's deprecation is going to result in two major changes for the privacy of its users. The first is that it's going to end collection of all user data that internet users do not willingly and knowingly put into a website. So that's currently third-party data, those third-party cookies. It's also going to give all Chrome users the option to opt out of being served retargeting ads at all. So that means that you'll no longer be tracked as an internet user. You're not going to be getting these personalized ads, which is great if you're really valuing your privacy. On the flip side, as an internet user, that means that the ads you're being served probably won't be as relevant to you. So it's a double-edged sword. But on the other hand, what does this mean for the advertisers? What does this mean for all of us? So that pixel-based form of retargeting that I mentioned earlier, that's going to be relying now solely on that first-party data. You're not going to be able to use those third-party cookies that are tracked from other parts of the internet that aren't your site. But that doesn't mean that you can't retarget at all. You can still be granular about the specific audiences that you're targeting and the way that you're bidding. You're just going to need to rely on your first-party data to do so. So let's talk about what this means for the future of retargeting. And despite deprecation for 1% of users being less than a year away, about 6 or 7 months away, a lot of advertisers are still turning a blind eye. So an Adobe study actually indicated that around 3/4 of marketers are still leaning into rather than away from third-party cookie advertising methods in 2023. And 64% even told researchers that they were going to spend more this year on this type of campaign than less. And hey, that's fine for now. Cookies are still available. It's still a great strategy. It's been around for a long time. There's a reason it's so popular. But obviously, it's not a strategy that can last forever. So let's hit on a few ways that marketers can start preparing for a cookieless future right now before it's here. So the first way would be to explore cookie-free retargeting strategies. So for a while, Google kept pushing back the timeline for when third-party cookie deprecation would begin. But now that there's an official timeline, it's time to start thinking about setting up your business to be able to market and advertise in a more privacy-centric digital landscape. So well, we at Adderall have been known for years, as I was saying, for our third-party cookie retargeting. There's actually a couple different forms of retargeting that don't involve cookies. And the most notable one is called contextual targeting, which we and other advertising platforms offer. So, what is contextual targeting? Well, instead of being able to target using those third-party cookies based on behaviors, advertisers can create campaigns around specific popular search keywords or relevant product and service categories. So then once those parameters are set, these ad tech platforms can then crawl and categorize the content of these different web pages based on the keywords that they include, the phrases that are mentioned, some themes, contextual information, and alternate text. So then whenever a user visits that page, the ad server is going to then match that page's content with relevant ads. So for example, we have here an Elle.com page that is featuring an Ulta ad. So Elle.com, for those that are aware of it or read it, very focused on women's health and beauty, etc. So this Ulta ad was placed here because the contextual content of this page makes sense in pairing with the relevancy of a health and beauty ad. So again, maybe people seeing this page haven't visited Ulta.com. Maybe they're not looking for beauty products right now. But using contextual targeting, the assumption is that maybe they're not looking at this right now. Maybe it's not hyper-personalized, but it is still relevant to them. So it is a great way to do targeting that's a little less hyper-personalized, a little less of that following you around the internet style that third-party cookies sometimes can make users feel. So then the second option is to optimize first-party data collection. So we've been talking about first-party data a lot already. And this is the information that you collect as a business firsthand from your website and your customers. And this could include a broad amount of information, such as the behaviors, actions, and interests of your audience based on their behavior on your website, your own CRM data, subscription data, and that can include things like certain demographic and geographic information, social data from other social platforms, and really just any other sources of information collected from surveys or feedback forms that you may have on your site. And so there are a couple different ways that you can really develop this strong strategy. So the first is you want to determine what you want to use the data for. And I mean, I know you might say, Courtney, I want to use it for retargeting. I want to use it for ads, and that's great. But you need to think about what type of ads are you going to be running? What kind of actions are you trying to get your users to complete? And then what information do you need of theirs in order to be able to target those ads correctly? So if currently your first party data is only collecting names and emails, but you need more information about your customers' interests, maybe consider creating some kind of a feedback form that has that and can collect that information. You also want to identify sources and gaps. So kind of as I was saying before, think about your actions and think about the information that you're already collecting. If you have a ton, that's great. If you think, I'm not really collecting a ton right now, think about different ways that you can collect that information, or maybe methods for collecting that information that you can enhance. You're also going to want to make sure that when you get this information, you can collect it and properly organize it. There's really nothing more frustrating than having all of this information and not knowing how to deploy it in your advertising strategy. Then there's also, of course, developing a measurement and analytics plan for this information. Again, great if you have the information, but it's important to see, are the strategies that I'm putting in place to collect this information, are they working? Do I need to amp up one area more than another? Am I getting only one type of customer's information? Think through and make sure you're always enhancing the strategy so that you are consistently collecting good information. And then also invest in proper tools. So this kind of gets back to making sure your information is organized and collected properly. There are a bunch of different vendors out there that help you collect this data and ensure that you are employing it in your advertising strategies correctly. And then finally, if you're wondering, how am I going to get my users to give me this information? I have to ask for it up front. The answer is by building trust. So according to a recent CoreSite survey, 80% of consumers actually said they'd be willing to hand over their personal information to brands so long as they get value in return. So think about how you can engage your audiences on a deeper level. What can you give them in return so they know that their information is going to lead them to have a better customer experience? And then finally, think about exploring cookie-free marketing channels. So we've already touched on cookie-free marketing methods, but there are channels out there that do not rely on Google's third-party cookies because Google doesn't own them. So that's most social channels, albeit not YouTube. Google does own YouTube. But things like Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok all have really great targeting strategies and targeting capabilities that by no means are tied to Google's cookie collection. So on the development front, ads providers such as AdRoll are also actively exploring new methods of advertising in tandem with Google's privacy developments and testing. So this is an entirely new frontier of advertising at large. So you might have newer channels and different forms of advertising with retargeting that are coming down the pipe. So keep an eye out for those. You're definitely going to be hearing more about them, especially as deprecation takes full effect. But in the meantime, when you're looking at how to run a good social ad strategy or just a good ad strategy in general on these cookie-free platforms, make sure you're testing different audiences for different channels. Where one audience lives may not be where another one lives. Similarly, run different copy and visual combinations. What resonates with one person in terms of a visual and copy match may not with another, and it may work better on one platform than another. And then also really think about investing in social video. I know we have on here Instagram and TikTok, two really big social video platforms. Social video is really taking off, especially with the advent of more shoppable forms of video. It's a great way to stand out amongst the crowd, stand out from just a sea of static ads. So keep that in mind. So what have we talked about today? Well, a couple different things. So big key takeaway first is that retargeting is an awesome strategy to apply entirely down your customer journey. So you can drive awareness, you can drive engagement, conversions, all with a variety of ad types on a variety of different channels. So it's a great way to meet your customers where they are and make them feel like you see them as an individual. So retargeting is changing for certain, but it's not going away. So Google's third-party cookie plans are going to force marketers to adapt a bit to update the ways that we have been retargeting for so long, but it doesn't mean that you can't retarget at all. It's just going to rely a little bit more on different methods, such as relying on first-party data utilization and on contextual targeting. And then finally, as any good marketer would do, prepare for these enhancements now. Look at cookie-free advertising methods. Prioritize your first-party data collection, which is important no matter what, and test out cookie-free marketing channels so when these changes do go into effect, you feel very prepared. So that's really it from me. Thank you so much for listening to this session. I know Alan has a couple different resources, including our Beginner's Guide to Retargeting, which is an excellent source for everything I talked about today and more. But thank you so much for listening, and I am going to hand it back to Alan.
All right. Thank you very much, Courtney. Courtney's absolutely right. We do have plenty of supplemental resources for all of you up in the handout tab. Please feel free to download as many of those as you need. Now, finally, our final presentation here is recorded actually at the Commerce Next e-commerce growth show that we held last month in New York. This is going to be Christian Ward. He's a chief data officer at Yext, and he honestly gave what I personally believe to be one of the best breakout session talks we had at the show. It was really good. I got tons of good feedback on it, and I just want to make absolutely certain that our webinar audience had a chance to see it. Now, Christian's actually with us in the chat today, so if you have any questions, feel free to toss that in the chat, and we'll get Christian to respond. And with that, this is Christian Ward discussing how conversational AI is revolutionizing chatbot effectiveness.
Very excited today to talk about conversational AI and what's changed. I think everyone here, probably since November 30th of 2022, feels like something has changed. That's the day ChatGPT came out. Sort of opened up a lot of people's eyes to what is conversational AI. But I gotta be honest, it kind of feels like at this point, it's a little bit of AI everything everywhere all at once. If you saw the Academy Award-winning movie, where it just feels like everybody is talking about this, and why are they talking about it? What has changed, and what's better, what's not? And one thing I would offer is, I think we should think about the internet, everything up until this point, right, as the who, what, where, when. It's really the factual basis. When you think about how you use the internet, that's what it was. It was access to information, right? But it wasn't really quite knowledge yet. And you know this based on how you use it. You'll say, when does this open? Do you have this product? You're asking very factual things, generally from a commerce perspective. But artificial intelligence, what has changed is now we can answer the how and the why, right? In the past, I would ask if something was available, where it was, and how good it was. Now I'm asking, how do I use this product? Why should I use this product? How can you help me? And it's changing because the AI can actually synthesize everything in white there and give you an answer. And we've never had that opportunity before, not at scale and not with any, let's say, good results. Because when we think about how things are developing, there's really 3 steps in this journey. See, we all know search, and we're all pretty good at search, but what you don't realize is search and querying is on a continuum on the way to dialogue. And if you think about chat has kind of moved along this continuum, because many of you have tried chat, you've installed chat, you know your chat. Let's be honest, a lot of times it sucks, because it was a glorified if-then loop, right? The numbers of people that get frustrated with chatbots is pretty significant, and they're gonna have to relearn that. But what you'll see is all of these things stem on this continuum towards dialogue. I know the last speaker was talking about personalization. Personalization with search was based on creepy cookie technology to follow you around and then try and pitch you something like the right thing at the right time to the right person. You know what we all learned during the pandemic? That's creepy as shit. You don't really want someone following you around. You want it on your terms when you have initiated a dialogue or you've entered a query. So let's break these down for real quick. Search, the word search, comes from the Latin circo, circus. So literally going to the circus, it's because you would look inside of a ring, a circle, where you're supposed to look inside the 3-ring circus. You look in each ring. So circus really means you ask a question and I encircle a huge potential number of answers in search. And that's where it started. Then you look and we move on to other areas where there's other, if you ask another question, you refine your search. So search is a little different than query. Query is what we've all learned to do over the last 2 decades, which is none of you today now go to the internet if you need shoes and types in shoes, do you? You'll get 9 billion results and none of them are gonna help you find the shoes you want. What do? You say, no, I'm looking for shoes size 9, men's marathon sneakers, right? So you're setting conditions and you're actually building a query. Now it's still technically using search, but you're looking for the intersection of a bunch of different variables. And that's why query comes from querere. It means to seek, to ask. But where this is all headed is dialogue. And dialogue is actually of Greek origin, where dia is through, between, of, and logos, the word. And what this is you're actually starting to add things like discussion and memory to things like chat. Because dialogue is the path by which people ask additional questions and get to what's, say, much more like an offer and not an ad, or help and not redirection, right? How many of you talk about chat systems today and you say, well, it's really about call deflection? That's terrible. You're basically saying, like, you have a metric that says we don't want to talk to you, and that's what we optimize for, right? You don't really want that. What you want is something that's capable of actually helping someone get to the right person or get to an outcome that helps them. Yes, it's a deflection, but it also builds loyalty and trust. And so we're moving through this continuum from search to dialogue. And we've actually, ChatGPT really gives us that opportunity for everyone to understand it. Now, for many of us in this room, we've been messing around with large language models and AI for years. But what we all are feeling right now is something called the Dunning-Kruger effect. If you're familiar with this, it's a study from the 1990s at Cornell University. And it basically says this. People generally, there's a relationship between how confident they are on any given topic and how much they know about it. So people generally, if they don't know much about something, they get really confident really easily, okay? Like they know it all, because they know just a little bit. But the more you learn, you actually reach a peak, and then it starts to come down. If anyone was wondering, this is the chart for mansplaining. Now, academically speaking, they did a lot of research. It's everybody's splaining, okay? Everyone does it on an equal basis. It's a human construct where you go, who here snow skis? Anybody snow ski? Remember that time where you're like, I'm pretty good at this, and you go to the Black Diamond, they're like, oh my God, absolutely not. That's the top of that drop, okay? So in AI terms, I feel like this has been happening where people are like, oh, conversational AI, this stuff's easy. I could freaking build this on the weekends. Look, we deployed it in 2 weeks. And then this happens, where the conversational AI asks 1,000 API calls about astrology and you sell pants. Okay? That's a problem. It's starting to talk about things that it shouldn't be. And then it asks you for the nuclear codes, which did happen to Bing's GPT, if you don't know that. It also told the New York Times writer doing the article on this if that person should leave their wife, right? So it starts talking about all this stuff because you don't know how to handle it. So I feel like we're all a little bit in the pit of despair here now, kind of going, I don't actually understand any of this, and we're all gonna die. And what's happening is it's gonna start getting better. And I was gonna show you today why is it getting better. It's that we're actually starting to understand how we can control this. And you don't wanna be on the forefront of this so much where you're one of these people that goes, we're just gonna hook up AI to the internet and the website, it'll be fine. Don't do that. It's really dangerous. And remember, it doesn't understand necessarily what you fed it. It's building a statistical probabilistic model of what the next right word should be. So if you're Viking ovens, it can tell you the whole story about the Vikings actually created ovens. And that's not true. And it will keep going because it doesn't understand what it's saying. Now, when we think about this, the reason we all feel this way is because this is the number of large language models that were most interesting to our community, let's say about a year and a few months ago. This was it in December. This was it in March. Since this March chart, there's at least 7 more. This is going so fast that it's very hard to keep in mind, how does this affect your business and how do we put it into good practice? So what changed? Well, and specifically with chatbots. So chatbots are a good idea, and I don't mean to belittle them, but at Yext, we never launched one because we just felt like building never-ending if-then loops was not a great way to get this done. Anybody who's done this knows what a pain in the butt it is, okay? It's not that it can't work, but it's not a delightful experience, and it's not the best use of the knowledge that you've gathered. And so what LLMs did was they gave us the ability to not necessarily be completely beholden to just training data. Classically, you had to feed enough training data and information that you would end up with the type of response you want. So if you wanted good response, bad response, good response, you had to have the data to do this. And many vendors and many companies didn't have that data set. And you'd borrow and you'd try and refine. What LLMs did was they gave us the ability to actually just ask questions and to guide it. So we didn't need as much data. We could say, actually, that wasn't the answer I was looking for. Can you look at it this way? And that changes it all. However, it's still not so great. So I asked ChatGPT, and this is the 4 model, this isn't 3.5, briefly describe what Commerce Next is. And it came back and it gave a really good answer. It said Commerce Next is really retail and e-com. And then I just responded to it. Actually, Commerce Next has changed to only focus on chatbot e-commerce. And it comes back very quickly and says, oh, thanks for the update. As for your information, Commerce Next has shifted its focus specifically to chatbot commerce. And then it goes and gives me a very confident answer on exactly what it probably covers now. And it's a good answer, but it's wrong. I didn't do anything but just answer it back because it's just statistically responding to what I offered. That's brilliant, and it's ever-changing and will change, I think, humanity in a way that we can't even fathom yet. Think of what it does for education and other. But how do we take advantage of it and prevent it from going off-roading? Because even Sam Altman, who was on the Lex Fridman podcast, the founder of OpenAI, he points out every time people go on stage and they say, this thing's broken, like I just did, you're not using it properly. You're using it like a database. It's not a database engine. It's a reasoning engine. Large language models were created as translation engines. They take one set and they can translate it and they can understand it in context. And so the way we do this at Yext, but generally speaking, I think everyone should, is you need to store your knowledge in a structure that's compliant, it's legal, and it has all the knowledge that you want discussed. Then you have to limit that the algorithm, the large language model, is not actually the thing querying the knowledge. The way we do this is we look at it saying, hey, this large language model, take what the human asked me and translate it into search queries. Because search queries are much easier to control if you have a knowledge data set to query from. Then when the search comes back and it says, here are the 4 things that answered that question, Then you have the large language model translate what the search came back with. If you don't do it this way or a similar way, you're left with a problem, which is you're not using it in the proper way. You're using it as a database. And that will not work, not with large language models in their current construct. You really have to have a database or a structure. We use a knowledge graph as a structure, but really it's any structured database where you can give and inform the large language model how it should work. So what this comes to, and the way that we found it works real well, is a lot of people and a lot of search tools kind of answer from memory, right? So a large language model might just start typing something, or it might answer from memory. But we've seen enormous success with something called retrieval augmented generation. And what this is it actually will take the data that was in the search algorithm, and it will rephrase and restate it in context with the conversation that it was having in the chat. Hopefully this isn't too technical, but basically what it's stating is, instead of me trying to just talk to the chatbot's like having the conversation with the human, but it's really pulling the data from a totally separate search algorithm, because you can control what the search algorithm is pulling back. This is actually how Google and Bard works, and this is how Bing's ChatGPT works, is it goes and it pulls search results and then restates them. If you're not thinking about it this way, I highly recommend you start working with your vendor, whoever it is, to start thinking and approaching it this way. You're going to be phenomenally happy with the results over what you currently have. And so the way that you can use this is things like case deflection in service, where someone asks a question, they describe it. Not only can you use this setup to pull back the answer and answer the question, you can actually use this setup to drive them to the next question. Same thing with Agent Desktop. This is an area I see lots of opportunity for. So many of our support service people are stuck rifling through effectively a binder of potential answers, and they don't have the immediate process where it can go find answers and state it to them in a way they can rephrase it to a client. So we've embedded the desktop right on the agent. And what's neat about that too is the knowledge graph can store things that the customer can know, but things like discounts or things you might do for them because they've had a bad experience, they're not visible to the customer, but they are visible to the agent. So they know that they're staying on company policy and they're staying within compliance guidelines. Lastly, content generation is a huge area for this. I think this is the part that everyone's worried about from an SEO and SEM and everything else perspective. The world does not need 4 billion articles on 5 tips to improve your summer garden. Like, we don't need that, but we know it's coming. And what's sad is, by embracing that, you're sort of giving Google and other search engines the legal out, where they could say, there's 5 billion of these articles. I'm just going to answer it. I'm not going to cite any of you. Something I think everyone doesn't realize yet is, you have never seen Google angry. Not once in your whole career. It has been a nice steady growth the whole time of ad sales, ad revenue, and products. They do not care and will not care to cite you or point to you in their generative AI search results. What they care about is maintaining their chokehold on the search experience. And I say that with absolute love in my heart. They're an amazing company, but they are under a serious challenge. Go look up the stats for Microsoft Edge browser and how much market share it's gained since January. It is not insignificant. So why is this happening now? Well, I'm going to frame this in the region beta paradox, if you're familiar with this, which is the region beta paradox states, if you have to go 1 mile for your commute, a lot of people will elect to walk that 1 mile. It takes about 20 minutes. But if your commute is worse by enough, you'll pick up a bicycle and you'll go on bike. Now here's where the region beta paradox comes in. In this region beta there, you see, basically in all instances, you are better off on a bicycle, from 0 all the way to 5. But it takes a certain amount of activation energy for you to go, this is terrible, I'm not walking 3 miles. It has to be bad enough for you to change. And so what AI is going to do for all of you and for us, it's going to force you to look at your tech stack very differently. Because we're all going to very quickly realize your current DXP, your digital experience, everything you're built on, is okay. It's not bad enough. You're like, yeah, we like our CMS. Yeah, I talked to enough of you to know it's not awesome, but it's not terrible. And you're about to have the drop-off. And that's going to be caused by this issue, which is today, there's no center for any experience. Your chat, your Google search results, your website, your search results on your own page, it all is the same knowledge, and it has to be powered. But it's going to be things like competition, trying to maximize less platforms. So instead of having 30 vendors, having 5, but getting more out of them. It's going to be job shifts, and it's also going to be customer expectations. Because while you may not have the data science team of Netflix, Netflix is what the customer is now used to. And so you have to start thinking about how to prepare for that. And so what's next? Well, today, when you think about it, you have chat, you have things like listings, that's data on third-party platforms, reviews, social. All of these are just different forms of knowledge about your content, your capabilities, your services. And now every one of the vendors that provides them is going, yeah, but now with AI. It's like dog walking, but with AI, right? Like, great, we all have AI. But if you look at this, it creates a very simple formula, which is your complete digital experience is the sum total of all of those different things. But if you remember high school algebra, you can factor that equation to this, right? So it's all of these, which are just forms of knowledge, times AI. And what's absolutely nuts is the AI is already commoditized. You're going to choose a different AI for each experience. At Yext, we already use one AI for search. We use 3 different AIs in chat. We use a different AI in listings, and we absolutely use a different one in reviews. Because if you have ChatGPT respond to reviews, you're going to be really upset. It's super confident, and it's kind of a jerk. But if you use another model, I won't name, I've shared with a few of you, another model, I swear to God, they trained it on rom-coms and Bradley Cooper movies. And it is like, I am so sorry, what could I do? Could I do it better? And that is what you're looking for, is they have different alternative forms of their training, and it changes the experience. So in the end, your chat strategy is really just your data strategy. The reality is you need to organize your data to be ready for this. Sitting an AI on your website is not going to cut it. And you're going to see it not cutting it on TikTok videos as people show what it said to them. As Snapchat, they're going through it now. There's a lot of danger in letting the model loose without controlling it or only using it in the proper manner. So, what does this look like today? Well, I can't show you a client's platform, but I can show you ours and how we approach it. And what I'll show you is, this is the back end of our platform. And it's a little bit hard to see, but what we have there at the top is 160,000 different knowledge graph entities. That's things like FAQs, things like blog posts, things like products, services, service desk help tickets. All of that data is stored in a graph, which is structured. So that can also allow me to control all of the different technical or websites. So now what you're seeing on the left-hand side, those are all the different websites and chats and search experiences. So this allows us to power our marketing site, which is a classic CMS, here's what we do sort of site. But then it also powers our development site. All of this is one platform on the back end. So the knowledge powers the CMS, powers the chat, powers the search. So if someone comes here and they type in a search, whatever they type in, the same knowledge that they could find on a web page or in a chat is now bringing back the answers to them in a search experience. See, the single most expensive click in marketing today is the one back to Google. You spent so much time and money to get them to your site, and then we kind of abandon them with like an if-then chat or a crappy search. And ideally, all those are going away, and they're just going to have a dialogue with your brand and with your business. So from here, if I go to our intranet, I can ask a question of our intranet like, I don't know, let's say I'm new. How do I enroll in benefits? The same tool that's analyzing the search is part of the chat system. So when I go to an engineering section, this is where engineers can tell us the ideas they want to see. This is all still in the same knowledge graph. I've shown you 7 platforms so far, and now I'm going to type in a complex chat, and this is now pulling knowledge from the graph, but then rewriting it using a large language model. So the secret to getting this all correct is to think about your entity, your business, as a massive collection of entities in some sort of structured knowledge. That way you can run it through compliance, you can run it through legal, and you control what that thing says to every one of your customers. With that, I thank you.
All right. right, well, that's going to wrap it up for us today. Thanks to Selena Wong, Josh Freeman, Greg Dowling, Courtney Irvin, Christian Ward for being with us today. A special thanks also to Glassbox, Yext, and AdRoll for making this webinar possible. And finally, thanks to all of you, our audience, for taking the time today. Thanks for bearing with us through all these technical difficulties. Please take a moment to share your thoughts about the webinar and the survey that you'll see at the end of the webinar. I'm Alan Dick, and on behalf of everyone here at Commerce Next, we hope you enjoyed this. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Thanks so much, everyone.